Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Anthony, and welcome back to Let Me Be Frank, episode 49. Yes, if you listen to the last episode, I did say 47 in the recording, but it was 48. So I made a little mess up. I'm sorry. I just want to update you guys quick before I intro the guest into today's guest into this episode. I just want to give you guys kind of an update on what was going on in my life because I was supposed to start the week prior to this week, but unfortunately, some things happened. Long story short, someone that I'm really close to had to go in for surgery, and instead of doing the more like adult responsible thing and just like keep working, it really pulled my attention. It really just distracted me in a negative way, and I started kind of falling into a negative place again because I was really worried that there's going to be a complication, or just, I've watched way too much Grey's Anatomy where everything goes well and then it just codes. So it's a little dark, but I was real, it was a big surgery, so I was nervous, but they are doing okay, so I'm happy there. Right after all that, pretty much right as they all that was done, I got sick. And I felt like I could have posted the episodes. The only problem is with Friday episodes, I like to film them literally like a day or two prior to Friday, which would be like filming it this week, because I want it's news related, whether it's like current news, entertainment news, whatever. It's news that I want the information to be as close as possible to the time. Like, for example, sometimes I would do stories at least a week or two in advance, and then after a week or two, it's either old news or it's completely different. So I wanted to make it as fresh as possible, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that was just some stuff going on. I'm sorry that there was that delay. I'm going to try to make it up. And I mean, one way I'm going to make it up is there's going to be 3 episodes a week now instead of 1, which is going to be a lot, but it's going to be good, And yeah, and who knows? Maybe I won't take a break or as long of a break next time, or I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Okay. So I want to introduce today's guest, today's phone a friend, the host of Chaotic Neutral Podcast. We actually never say her name on the show, so I'm not going to say her name either. And if you're watching the YouTube version of this right now, you can see me. The interview, you're not going to see us. So it is going to be more of like an anonymous interview. But overall, she was so funny. Like I said, she hosts the Chaotic Neutral Podcast, so you need to go check that out. She's it was an interesting conversation because I'm a millennial and she's from Gen Z, and I think it was an interesting back and forth. Her podcast is very like conversational, and mine has like some more of an interview, but I try to make it conversational. So her and I believed meshed really well. And some of the things that we get into with the show, we talk about her podcast, we get more into detail. She gives some really good advice on building a podcast and, managing a podcast. And then we also get into some anime because I guest starred on her show, like pretty much right before we recorded for my show, we recorded for her show. And we we got into like anime crushes and just some funny stuff. So I think it's some really good back and forth. I think she's really cool. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this interview as much as I did. Enjoy. All right. Hello. How is it going?
Pretty fine and dandy. I just ate, okay, like 2 pieces of cheese pizza. I might have another just 'cause, gotta get those carbs ready for swim.
Seriously. I'm trying to pretend too that we didn't just talk for an hour prior.
The conversation still goes. I am a social butterfly at heart. So this is wonderful for me, giving me that extrovert energy here.
And that's perfect. I wasn't the most outgoing kid growing up, or like individual, and this podcast hosting has really helped me, besides meeting new people, which we talked about on your show. Yeah, like that's really helped, talking to like all these new people and kind of forcing myself to actually have to interact with others and socialize.
I know, especially for me, I didn't really have like a lot of chances or times or like events where I get to like talk a lot about like myself or like, me just going blah 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 blah. So like doing this is actually kind of like, enhanced actually kind of like helped me because, at school you don't really have a chance to do that. So doing this has kind of made me like be like, whew, like I have time to just be like my crazy self, just be kind of like authentic.
Yeah, definitely. And we're gonna get a little bit more into your show just to let my audience know, what your show's all about. But one question I like to start with, and I like to ask all my guests because I am an aspiring writer. If you were a novel, what would the back of your book say?
Okay, so I kind of got inspiration because I like to watch Trixie Mattel and Katya.
Yep.
So picture this. I am wearing like, a white dress, right? There's like a panther, or no, even better. It's gonna be a unicorn because why not? And the background, the background's gonna be like me at a fireplace, but like it's like the fireplace is on fire, and it's gonna be like it's gonna be called a memoir with some extravagant tales and some half truths, with some wrote like written down um tales of my subconscious mind and dreams. Just sprinkled in there. Why not?
I'm so sorry. I never laugh at anyone's answer with this question. That's amazing.
Make it interesting because I mean, yeah, it's fun to hear about Paul and him out in the woods, hacking wood. But it's good to have something about like, yeah, literally, it was like 2 days ago. I had a dream about bald Brian, and I was like in a drag show, right? I don't even know what I was doing. I was there. I was having a fun time, probably because I was like binge watching shows. Okay, when I'm fixating on something, I just go down this rabbit hole. So thankfully, my dream kind of like encapsulates that. I'm like, ooh, look at me go. Yes, work, girl, cover girl.
That Oh my god, that makes me laugh. That was wow. I do love your answer with that. And some people have gotten the questions ahead of time and some people don't. And usually the ones that didn't, like yourself, kind of like, get nervous under the pressure because it's like, oh crap, like what would my life story, the back of my book, say and stuff. And you had not only like an answer on the spot, but like such a dynamic and creative answer. So I really appreciate that.
No problem. Just my brain is just like spitballing with so many. It's like the Ratatouille scene where it's like he eats a grape and there's these like colors, and then he eats the cheese, and together it's like a whoa French noises.
I have to confess, I haven't seen that movie in its entirety.
Oh, so you're like my mom then. You watch like halfway through, then you fall asleep,
That's
or like
exactly what happened with that movie. And it normally
okay.
doesn't, but that with that one it did, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Whenever the movie's on, I don't even get up. Like, I don't even get up, right? I watch it the whole way. If there's like a fire going on, it's like, sorry, I had to watch the ending, except for the credits, then I leave.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, it's okay. I'll watch that later.
So so yeah, tell us more about your podcast, which is called Chaotic Neutral.
Yeah, so I kind of started it on a whim, honestly, like that's like what I naturally do, right? I have an idea, and then on impulse, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna act on it. So it kind of started off with this one person that I knew, and he was like, you have like an interesting way of like telling stories, and you like go all over the place. It's really entertaining. You should start a podcast. I'm like, all right, bet. So I searched a podcast app, and lo and behold, there's a beautiful purple anchor
Anchor.
before
Yep.
the update. When I don't really like the update, but it's okay.
We can
So
talk about that too.
yes. So I was like, okay, I need a name, right? And this was when I was going into like my D&D character, right? Like I don't know, like I think it's like chaotic neutral. And my friend was like, no, you're more chaotic neutral. Okay, your character's a more chaotic good. And when I was thinking, okay, usually there's no between for me. I either pick a pretty good name at least, or like I cannot think of any at all. So for naming the podcast, I was like, I mean, since it's about me, might as well just name it Chaotic Neutral. And then I just slapped a logo of my cat because I didn't have anything else. So, you know.
Yeah, so speaking of that too, yeah, so anyone that you've ever interviewed on your show, have they ever known like your name or your identity or no?
Usually not. Like for me, like whenever I talk about like myself at all, it's just like, things that pop in my head because either I just like just think this is this very out of the blue story about me in like let's say second grade doing this tap dance or something, or it's like, oh yeah, like I remember doing this, and this. Okay, so it's not a lot about like structure and events. It's more just being like in the moment. It's like it's a conversation. Like what's gonna come up? Do I know? No. It's just gonna like it's just some improv, just having fun with it, honestly. So like things about me, you kind of like learn as you go. In some episodes, like since my memory is kind of like woo, so sometimes I repeat myself every so often. But I think like how I tell it is kind of interesting. So it's like you're hearing it for the first time, or it's like even better because how I word things.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed that your show involved having conversations. I like to think that my show, Let Me Be Frank, is similar in a way. Like, yeah, there's some questions for interviews or like certain topics I decide to pick out or whatever, but I feel like the flow is important. Obviously, like if there's some humor in there, that's gonna obviously catch some attention for a lot of people. So instead of like
Yeah.
this whole with every action being scripted, it's I don't know, sometimes it's a little too obvious and might get a little too boring, or like I do like, I've listened to at least 4 or 5 episodes of your show. It's so hard to keep up with all the podcasts now compared
I
to before.
know. Especially like now during the pandemic, it's just booming because like everyone doesn't really have like a lot to do. They like have a lot of time. So what do? Just start a podcast. It's like pretty simple and easy. And it's easily accessible. And like for me, um, I just do it because, especially for me, like over the years, I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm pretty good with time, time management. But like yeah, for me, I'm really good at just being improv, just like thinking on the top of my head, all these things. Because like if I'm gonna like have it scripted, at least for me, it's like I'm thinking that over and over how I word it and okay, how you deliver it, at least for me, it's just robotic, right? It's like, okay, you just read it through a script. Meanwhile, me just being authentic, just being like, okay, this thing, okay, what's the subject that's popping in my head now? Like kind of that, oh, like patterns, like A is equal to one, B is equal to two. That's kind of the same thing. Like you ask me a question, it's like, okay, cool. Here's this thing.
Yeah. Speaking of, because you talked about how like all these podcasts that started blowing up due to the pandemic, or at least like in the last couple years in general. I feel like just so many shows have been coming out. When did your show start?
So I actually like surpassed my 1 year because I like
Nice.
started on like January 8th of last year. And I started like, during my junior year because, that's when I kind of got that inspiration. And it was kind of like before the pandemic. So before I didn't really have like an idea or like a structure of episodes. And over time, as I've learned to do it, I gotten better. Like how I talk, have a conversation with a guest. I mean, and I'm still learning. I'm not one that's like a professional, like, oh yeah, like especially with my mic. I literally just use my phone. So like, but that's the kind of cool thing about starting a podcast. Like all you need is a device and you can just start. So, you know, starting during this time especially, like everything's kind of restricted. Everyone, has like all this energy they need to, you know, let out. So, that's kind of like though a thing that you can do and have fun, and you can also socialize with other people.
Exactly. Yeah. I've so many. We were talking about this on your show, how like just how many people we've met internationally, and yeah, my show started ironically after the pandemic. My 1 year is going to come up in May, because May of last year I started, and it was because a big part of it was because I had actually my job wasn't deemed as um oh my god, what's the I just blanked on the word. Wow. Oh wait,
It
what's the word?
wasn't like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just had it in the tip of my
Essential.
tongue. Essential, yes.
I couldn't. I was like mandatory. I like could not. I was going through all these words in
The
my head.
Mandalorian, yeah, I know that show.
But yeah, it wasn't deemed essential, so like work closed. I ended up not having the job anymore and stuff. So yeah, this like starting a podcast really became more of a full-time thing, which usually a lot of people are working their daytime jobs, like their 9 to 5s, and then they have the podcast on the side or whatever passion that they do. And then this, I was like, oh, I'm just learning it, but I kind of have to be good because I also have bills to pay.
Yeah, and for me, I just do it for fun. Like,
Yeah.
especially when I go to college, am I gonna have like a lot of time? Possibly, I don't know. Like, but I know for me at least, whenever I get to do it, it's kind of like I'm not really good with like having it scheduled per se. Like, hey, it'll come out when it can. Because like for me, it's just as a hobby, and
Yeah.
it kind of is good because like for me, I learned to like it kind of like opened these doors of being like creative. Like starting a podcast, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try this thing because like you learn from other people, like, oh, maybe I should do this or that.
Yeah, you and what's cool to and you with just being like with the authenticity that your show has, like you've gained a lot of followers on Instagram. We're connected on Instagram. I don't know if
Hmm.
um I don't know if Chaotic Neutral has other social medias, but I know like
Twitter for now, yes.
okay. Yeah, Instagram and Twitter because Facebook's kind of dying at this point. So yeah, Instagram and Twitter. Yeah. Yeah, but we're connected on Instagram. And yeah, and I mean there definitely was I was noticing you were growing a big following and especially for it just being a hobby. I mean that must be cool still. Like it must be a bonus.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to me because I'm like, I mean, for me, I'm not big on numbers, right? Like, if you listen,
Yeah.
that's like awesome for me because it's like, oh, people really enjoy. Because like for the longest time, I'm like, I'm just having this out there. If people want to listen, you can. So when people really enjoy like what I do and all that, that's really like, I guess like I'm kind of in disbelief because I'm like, for the longest time, like whenever just talking about something or like having like a fun fact or something, or oh yeah, I had this story. There's not really a time because for me it's always like school and then sports and then I'm home.
Yeah.
So when I finally started this podcast, I kind of had that time to do it. And then you meet other people that like enjoy you doing that. And then after like when I, built up because I'm really good at engaging, right? So that's how I started off and I really like because my show is basically about conversation. So you meet other people, kind of cross promotion. Like you meet other people, you gain followers from that, and that's kind of how, at least, how I grew.
Yes. Yeah, you do. Yeah, I know you were actually one of the first podcasts that actually shouted out my show. And I noticed you give a lot of, it looks like you show a lot of support for other shows or like shout them out on Instagram stories and all that. So that was, yeah, I think that's something that I see more shows doing it now, but I think it was something that a lot of shows, and I could even say mine included, kind of forgot about, or like I didn't really know, I didn't really think of that honestly, because I noticed so many people were so busy building their own shows that it was like, oh yeah, I could like, I guess I could collab with other podcasts, or I could at least talk to them. Like I don't know. I think in my mindset at the beginning when I started last year, it was like, okay, this is competitive. We're all trying to beat each other out. When in reality, it's like such a loving and caring community.
Yeah, and especially like we all kind of have like the same goal, okay? We just want to have our voice heard. And
Yes.
like we all started off somewhere, right? We all had to start, from scratch. Or we all had to like grow at our own pace. Like some grow faster than others. And like for me, I'm not one that's like, oh yeah, like I do this, this, and this, and I have some like I don't care about that. Like for me, I'm more of like, oh yeah, I just do this. Like I'm very like nonchalant. Just be like, yeah, like I don't think it doesn't really hit me because it's like, you know, it's just the audience and all that. And whenever I like shout other podcasters out, there's like so many, and like you get to, for me at least, I'm the one that's like, oh my gosh, I can meet so many people and talk to them. Like, hey, if you want to be on, I'm always down to collabs as well because like you get to engage me, being the social butterfly. I'm like, oh yay, conversation.
Yeah, no, I wish I personally, because last year, well maybe a little before last year was when I actually started listening to podcasts. I guest starred on my friend at the time, they were hosting a podcast, and yeah, I personally wish I discovered them years ago or at a younger age, because yeah, it is really, it's cool. I mean, I'm not someone that's big on YouTube, but I've seen a lot of, like, with the YouTube community, I've seen a lot of like toxicity or drama involved. Not saying it's all of them, but I see a lot more of that. Whereas like with the podcast community, I was afraid that maybe that would be present as well, and it was a great surprise that it was different.
Yeah, and especially because like especially for me, I kind of learned like tips and tricks on how to like kind of like engage with your audience and all that, and how to like find what works for you, but also like doesn't hinder you. Like
Yeah.
for instance, like especially since me being from the younger generation, I kind of know what works. Like people that like to spam a lot of posts a day or stories, that kind of like tunes like my generation off, because we want something that's like quick, easy to click. Like we don't like to scroll for that long, like just tap tap tap, because we're not going to click. We just like to scroll. And especially with posts, if you do like I don't know, like more than like, at least for me, 5 a day, because usually I like to space them out because that way people will be able to see them.
Yeah.
So I learned to kind of like build on that and also like learn from other people. That's how you grow, is from learning from others.
That I 100% agree with that, and especially too, like different like age groups and stuff too. Like we're technically in different age groups, and yeah, it's interesting to hear that snippet of like the stories and stuff, because that's something that maybe I don't think I spam mine, but who knows, maybe I do, or that's something I could learn from that I would have never. It's, yeah, it's good to talk to one another in the community and kind of, yeah, get those like tips on certain things, because it could be something small, like an Instagram story to me isn't like a big, it's a small piece when it comes to like the podcasting world and the marketing, but at the same time it's something that could be, like, if you are spamming, that's something that could be turning off so many listeners and you don't even know.
Yeah. And then again, like I'm still learning as well. Like me, like like even starting out, I was kind of lost because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then eventually, I'm like, I'm just gonna do this thing, and if it works, cool. And it works. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah, I originally started recording through Anchor, which I want to touch on Anchor since we mentioned it, because I'm curious with your opinions on it. But yeah, when I started on Anchor and like going forward too, I mean, have faced every single, I can admit, I've faced every single possible technical difficulty that one could go through, whether it's like the camera dying or the episode not even recording at all or only recording half of it and then it stops. And it's, yeah, it's definitely, if you want to be a podcaster, it definitely takes some perseverance.
Yeah, and I mean, I just like to keep at it because it's like it's what I started off with.
Yeah.
And for me, like I'm not one that's like techie and all that. Like literally I have a phone and an iPad and I'm like, yeah, it works for me. Cool. I have a Kindle Fire, but like that's kind of like in the barrens of my shelf. But anyways, I am not one that's like, technical. Me, it's literally I want to have it raw and authentic as like possible. Like yeah, like now at least I like to, as I said before, like take out clips of like, because for Anchor, yeah, there's some glitches. I mean, that's kind of, expected, because it's nothing's gonna be like perfect all the way.
Yeah.
So for Anchor for me, um, it works because like I'm not one that is doing it professionally, and yeah, there's some things that like I personally don't agree with, particularly the logo change. I like the original one better, but that's for me. That's for me.
Well, they were, yeah, were they, I swear I saw this in an email. I'm not 100% sure. Were they bought out by Spotify, or they like
Yeah,
partnered?
yeah, I think they're partnered with Spotify. I don't know the specifics, but yeah, they have they have something to do with Spotify. Yes.
Okay. And they just connected to, this was actually kind of cool. I mean, yeah, with the updates, I was like, okay, with some of them. But one thing that did seem cool that I want to look a little more into is WordPress is connected now. And
Ooh.
Okay, I was gonna say I didn't know if you knew that. That's like brand new. Where now if you have a WordPress site, I think it's WordPress.com, and I want to make that clear because there's also WordPress.org. I want to say if you have a WordPress.com website, those posts you can somehow like transform them into podcast episodes.
Huh. That's really interesting because, like, for me, especially, I kind of had some, bumps in the road with Anchor, but like, I'm still gonna pull, like, come through because it's like easier for me. And it's like, because me, I'm not even technical, but like editing wise, it's like pretty easy. Like, you scroll, ooh, I want this deleted, boop, boop, delete. There you go. I'm like one of those grandmas that doesn't know how to use their FaceTime. I'm like, what is working? Hello? Can you hear me? Is this
See,
good?
I was in between you and grandma when it came to editing because it was definitely still some sort of learning curve because if I ever posted a YouTube video in the past, I did not edit that at all and they were terrible. And just oh god. So yeah, I definitely it took me a little bit, I guess being cuz I'm not like old, but like I'm not young.
You're in the middle.
Ye-
You're a middle millennial.
I'm getting to that age where it's considered death at this point.
That's literally what my friend Liz said because she's also a millennial. And like for me, especially even starting out, you know, I didn't really know what to do. Like the quality isn't that good. Like literally the first episode I did it like in class. So like yeah, there's background noise and all that. And eventually it's like the ones that I didn't think were good, especially like at the time that I am now. I deleted them, so like they're not on Spotify anymore. But it's kind of weird and odd that like sites that aren't supported by Anchor, like they're up. So like that's kind of a hindrance because like oh like I don't mind it, but at the same time I'm like oh but yeah that episode is not good. Why do you have it up? Oh.
I see. I didn't know that. I thought if you were in Anchor originally and distributing through the other ones, I thought it would disappear on all of them.
Well, I think like especially I came across like this one site that still has like I don't know if it's because it's international or if it's because they like take it before like you delete it or something. Like because I kind of have this problem with this one site. I'm trying to get it removed. It's taken a while.
Hmm.
Kind of frustrated. But I'm trying my best. Like at the same time, I'm young. I don't know what to do. I'm like, I'm just like running blindly through the fire, and there's a bear chasing me. But
Trust me, it happens regardless of age. It happens to all of us. I've had this has actually happened not too long ago. It's the worst, and it happened I think a couple times in like within a month, where, for example, like a title episode, I would type it out. I post the episode. It's scheduled to post. It comes out. I spelled something wrong in the title. I try to update it. It takes like hours to update.
especially if like you, at least for Anchor, if you unpublish it, and if you want to snippet something off and you save it and then you post it again, at least for me, like if it was already posted, the people that are currently listening, I think like it didn't update if they're continue listening, at least for me. So I don't really have a problem. Like for me, I'm not one that's like I'm very relaxed.
And that's good to have with with running a podcast or running any sort of small business or business in general. Another question I want to bring up, this doesn't have to be podcast related, that I like to ask guests is what is one of the most important lessons you have learned in life?
Don't lose sight of who you are because like you are the only person living that life. Like yeah, you can be influenced and all that, but just do what makes you happy because like if you try to please others but lose sight of yourself or like change yourself, you're not going to be happy. Like especially like it's like a facade and it's going to wear off or it's going to tear down. And like even with podcasting, if you kind of have like this facade like yeah, it's good if you're doing, but if you're doing it so often you're not happy with it, it's not going to work out. So just be like authentic. Just be like your true self as much as possible.
That that's great advice. That's something that I needed to learn years ago. And I'm happy that your generation seems to, I don't know, I guess be more aware of that, which is great.
And I mean, we were kind of influenced by like so many things, like such as like, I was learning this in English class because we were learning about like society and how it's like influenced by like, different works of art. We got our Hunger Games, The Maze Runner, how it's like, wow, like so many people want you to change, but like you have to do what is right for you and for others. So that's kind of what I've been influenced by and all that. Especially like Monster High, like you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta be unique.
Yeah, if you'd like to listen to a Monster High collection story, you can check out the Chaotic Neutral podcast
It
and
was
listen to our
experience.
episode there. Yes. And I want to, and a little bit that we touched on the episode on your show was we got that I want to bring up here in more depth is we were starting to talk about anime, and we got into like certain crushes that I used to be embarrassed to admit, but you know what, now I'm not embarrassed anymore.
Yeah, whatever you liked, you're not the only one. There's someone
Yes.
out there.
I'm curious with anime, like what are some of your favorite ones, maybe back then or now, or yeah.
Okay, listen, I got into it, oh gosh, like maybe 4 years ago. It's been a while. And I got into it from my friend at the time. He showed me like Danganronpa, and I love the art style. It was like English dub because that's easier for me.
Hmm.
So I was watching that. I'm like, okay, I need to watch more. Where can I find it? And it was just one little thing, and it just this big rabbit hole just spiraling down. I've over the years watched so many. I even have an anime list that's like still getting updated. Um, like I've watched so many different genres. Because it's English dubbed, like the voice actors, you kind of recognize them. And I just love it because it's like the art is beautiful. I think like it's very diverse because like I think for me at least like shows out today it's kind of boring. It's like kind of the same plot over and over.
Hmm.
There's only so much you can do. On anime, literally, there's this one where you can watch like literally the Chinese zodiac, like the people fight for winning, and then one is a necromancer, like the other one can fly, like
Okay.
it could get,
Wait,
yeah,
sorry. The Zodiac one. Are you talking about Fruits Basket or a different one?
that's a different one. Okay,
Okay,
there's no
because I like
fighting.
Fruits Basket.
Okay, okay, for Fruits Basket, I've watched the old and new version, and for me, like on TikTok, people do like glass art, especially like with anime characters. I have like two because like I don't have paint, so I literally just use Sharpie, boom, slapped it on. I had the enlightenment of, oh, I could just use plastic and just draw with a Sharpie. So now like above my window where I sleep, there's like a whole gallery of anime characters. Like I literally went through my list of anime shows and we're like, oh, I like this character, I like this one, so I'm gonna draw him. So yeah, it's kind of a problem, but it's okay.
So yeah, I was gonna say, did you name like specific ones you liked?
Oh, okay. Listen, I'm gonna to keep this short. I'll probably name like 20, right?
Oh, well, okay, yeah. Start maybe like five.
Yeah, like my list currently, I've watched like 83 shows.
Oh
Tee
wow.
but yes. Um, I've watched Black Butler, this one called
Okay.
Servamp, One Punch Haikyuu. Wait, one, two,
I,
three. Um, um, Juni Kaisen Zodiac War. I'm looking at my pictures right now. Along the Sea, that one was pretty good.
it's okay. You can say more than five. It's okay.
Okay, well, last one, Inuyasha.
Yes, that's one of my favorite. So-
Okay, so Shomaru, he could like smack me and like almost like cut off my arm, and I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, I get to meet you. I'm so happy.
so,
I'm your biggest fan.
one of my best friends, Shishomaru is like her, that was her crush, that to this day probably, like that was her guy. And for me, like Inuyasha and honestly even Kagome, I developed a crush on. I really liked their relate. Like Shishomaru was an awesome badass character, but Inuyasha and Kagome, I weirdly liked their whole story and romance.
Yeah. And like for me, I just it's just how it's structured and all that. And especially like I think my first like anime movie, Studio Ghibli, Howl's Moving Castle. That just set like a standard for men. If you're not like Howl, who are you? If you don't cook eggs, if you don't like, it's beautiful. So yeah, that's kind of my rabbit hole of like just going over and like especially cosplayers, people that dress up. Hi, we see you, we love you. You're amazing. And I'm just in this rabbit hole of fictional characters, especially okay, I had this okay. So there's this one character from Silent Hill, okay? Pyramid Head. I, I'm like trying to say it so many times that I manifest it, and who knows, maybe I'll actually like legit meet Pyramid Head. Like he's like, well, I don't know, he'll probably just be like, hey, what up? Like I don't know, but or a cosplayer. Yeah, he'll be like, hey, what up? But like, yeah, I think I just like the villains or like the ones that are like not the protagonist because I'm like, okay, the protagonist
Yes.
after a while, we get it. You want to save the world or whatever. Okay, good for
Yeah.
you. There's like 50 other Kyles like you. Okay.
See, Kyle's
Meanwhile,
usually the one punching walls.
that's what makes it. See, that's
Sorry,
what
that
makes
was a
it different.
stereotype.
They drink Monster and then they just.
Speaking of that dynamic, I one of my other favorites is Death Note.
Okay, okay. I actually okay. Also, I collect pins, and so many of them are anime. Like I have so much like merch and stuff of anime. It's kind of a problem, but it's okay. L, he is so beautiful. People think like Light is like cool, whatever. Okay, he's kind of like crazy. Like I like
I liked
crazy
both of
anime
them a
guys.
lot. Yeah.
But oh wait, this foot scene that was kind of sus. That was like
I al- I almost spit my water out on the microphone. I almost forgot about that, and that was probably the moment I shipped.
you were like, yes. Okay. Since you liked anime, okay, I'm gonna read you, right? Do you know Wattpad?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. We see you, X-Reader. We see you. We see you. We see you, your name. We get you. I was one of those kids. It's okay, it's okay. I was a middle schooler once.
As I will admit,
Also,
I never read
yeah.
anything. I don't.
You're trying to
I'll
call
just
yourself out.
retract. I'll
We
digress.
we had a telepathic click and we understood each other.
You're like, don't go there, and I was like, okay, I'll stop. I'll go back because
I
there's
think it was
there's
like
definitely there's probably something that caught my eye, and I was like, okay, I have to read this.
yeah, it's okay. If at least the your tags aren't shown to the public. It's okay. It's okay. Your secret's safe with Wattpad, unless you delete it, which I did. Because okay, listen, I was trying to be an aspiring writer. Like, okay,
Yeah,
this
I tried
girl,
a couple stories.
yeah, like this girl, you literally just copy and pasted your essay that you wrote for class. Like, that's not it. But some of the ones I wrote because I was a sad middle schooler, so I was like, oh my gosh, like Shoto Todoroki, hi, like oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Bakugo, okay, you're out there, it's fine, like it's okay. But now I've evolved with like Dobby, Hawks, it's okay, it's fine.
In the back of my mind, because I think about Anchor has the age demographics, and I just know like at least 50% of my audience is like, what the hell are they talking about?
Okay, okay, listen, I'm going to expose myself. I did a project, for school, you do like social studies and science fairs. I
Yep.
always did social studies because it was easier. The last one I did, it was about how America influenced anime. I still have the award in my room. Guess what the title was called? Just guess. You know,
What was it?
Otaku is life. And it wasn't even good quality. I literally had tape, hot glue, literally like splattered like pictures I got from Google. I went pretty far up. I went to, I think, regionals, you
Wow.
know? Yeah, and this is when I actually kind of had self-confidence. Like even like going out, I wore an Attack on Titan like the not the good quality material of like the jacket, you know, from the Scout Regiment, because I was like, it's fine. And I went pretty far up because like, I just love it so much. I'm like, yeah, there's like McDonald's, which is, because I don't want to get copyrighted.
Yep.
And like the anime style, they kind of make it more like, you know, not to say American features, but they changed it instead of being like, well, it depends. There's some exceptions with art styles, and but like in now modern time, they kind of like the tiny nose, the lips, like the shiny eyes and all that, and like hairstyles, all that. Like there's a lot of things in it that's like influenced by America,
Mm,
like the Western culture, especially since
yeah.
Western culture, especially just ate it up. They're like, yes, especially me. I'm like, I'm literally like my precious, I'm just golem, just like hunched over in a corner, be like mine.
To to wrap up the show, I want to just ask, I guess, two more questions. I was gonna say one, but I'm a liar. No, uh, one to add in a question here. What is? I think I've listened to you guest on at least another show or two, possibly. At least there was one show. I think you were asked this, but just for my audience, what is a piece of advice for anyone who wants to start a podcast or maybe is thinking like, oh, there's so many podcasts out there, should I even start one? Like, what is any like piece of advice you'd have for new people who are like thinking of starting one?
Yeah, so when I first started out, I kind of learned like the tricks as I went, like follow other podcasters because like they're like you, right? They want to make their voice heard, and then eventually they're gonna find like your content and all that. And for me, like this is what works for me. When I post an episode, I go to like my Instagram feed and I just spam and all that, like just like, and also saving helps. Okay, so like save, it's not that hard. You just go click, 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 click. Especially me, like I'm like an expert, especially since I have long acrylics. It's very satisfying doing click, click, click. So, I, do that, and also like it's so an accomplishment, like 600 followers, 600 plays, 500 more listeners. Just go to the comments and just say congrats, and then they're gonna like, be like thank you and all that, and that's how you go. And especially if they have like, for me, less than 23 posts, I just like all of them. And this
Yeah,
is
same.
how I do my shout outs, right? They see that you liked all their posts. They take a screenshot and they say, at least for me, I say, go check out, tag this person.
Yep.
And then they put it on their story, and it's kind of like, cross promotion. Like, okay, you check out them, they check out me. It's something to do, to help someone with their growth. And especially like for me, for my stories, I usually post on my story that I post an episode, and then, just have engagement and, try to message other podcasters. Like if they put something on their story, just swipe up and be like, oh yeah, I can relate to this and all that. Or if they put it on the story that they got followers, swipe up and say congrats and all that. That's how I grew. And also like for me, collabs, since that's mainly what my podcast is, that's also cross promotion.
Yep.
And when you do that, you find other people that are like, hey, that's cool. And also I have like a Google form where it's like, hey, if you, want me on your show, there you can put that. Like link trees also help. If you're on multiple websites, just make a link tree so you can have all the websites and they can just click. And especially if someone has an Apple podcast, give them a review and write
Yes.
just a something quick, something cool. And what I do is I just take a screenshot and like tag them. But like for usernames especially, make it your podcast name. Because some people I'm like, I don't know who you are. I'm sorry. Like your name is like Gilbert 6000. Like, I don't know a Gilbert.
See, mine, yeah, mine was already taken because the problem when I started my show, and this is just advice of what not to do, is well, I mean, I guess something you should do that I didn't is research your podcast name. I did not do that at all. And I ended up realizing there was a couple other Let Me Be Franks. I'm like, oh shoot. So that was already taken, and that's why, yeah, I'm stuck with Frank Podcast.
Yeah, well, for me, chaotic neutral. The other one was like D&D, like something with that. I was like kind of like the second one, but then after me, there was like so many other chaotic neutrals, and like yeah, like some people might copy. I'm not one that's like you stole my gig and all that. Like
Yeah.
me, I'm just like hey, I'm very relaxed. So that's kind of like other things that I do. Also, like people do engagement groups. Like hey, I posted this thing, go, give it engagement. That helps grow. And okay, when you spam it, there's some good things with it, and there's some cons. Like okay, you can spam liking posts, like I said, but you don't want to spam, having like multiple posts a day. Like if on your feed you have like 500 or something. But again, it depends like when you started out. Like I'm saying, like in one day you post five, or like in your story you post like 10. That kind of like, at least for me, I get overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, that's a lot. And like spamming, because spamming, it has some good and bad things, like I said, with that. And also for commenting and all that, you want to give some genuine responses. It's very easy to just like put emojis and all that. That's fine. But like also engaging, being like, oh my gosh, congrats, like, oh, I need to check this out right now, those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. Yeah, and with the engaging of posts, it's definitely nice when the response it like you want it, you want to believe like the people that are commenting actually like read your post or like actually interacted with it, or it's not a comment that's like want to be a model, DM us, or want like those generic like robot bot things.
Yeah. Oh, and also be on other social medias. Like for me, mainly what I use is Instagram, and like ever so often, like yeah, I have a Twitter as well that I started. But other than that, I'm not really into like a lot of social media, because there's like people will find you on like your websites if you like make a link tree and like find where you are, or like for me the stumble across it from other people that like do the shout outs. But when you use other websites, like for me Twitter, see who made posts and like it, because as well as with Twitter, they show like what you like and all that, so you can find other people.
True, yeah. Um, I feel like I definitely have to segue this into the last question, which was what are your social media links or websites or any links that you want us to follow or help support?
So I'm on Twitter. There's some interesting tweets that I make that are kind of chaotic, kind of fun and goofy. It's KO Neutral Pod for Twitter. And I have my link tree where you can find where I am, published for my, streaming websites. I'm also on Instagram called Chaotic Neutral Pod. And just find me on there, and, have some handy dandy episodes up on there that are kind of with my conversational piece.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. It was lovely being on here, Frank.
And same to have you on and be on yours. Hello, Past Frank here. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of your favorite platforms. Also, make sure to follow the Instagram page, Frank Podcast. That's where I post the most about the podcast. I want to thank this week's guest for guest starring. It means so much. I want to thank my executive producer, Monica Leigh. I want to thank producers Alexa H. and Rebecca R. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys for listening, for watching, for subscribing, for sharing, commenting, all that good stuff. Thank you so much. Make sure that you go buy some merch, make everyone jealous. If you'd like to become a producer of the show, just go to the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. I hope you have a super special, awesome day, and bye.